Welcome to Power Your Life Today, the podcast that helps you live a life of more service, value, and love. I'm your host, Christy Joe, mind and body strategist and creator of Power Your Life Today. If you are ready to build and apply mindset strategies to help you stand in your power, head over to www.poweryourlifetoday.com to download the Female's Guide to Powering Her Life or the 5 Steps to Plowing Through Resistance. Welcome to Season 3, where I am interviewing my parents about parenting power. They're the 2 people I admire most in this world, and I'm delighted to share them and their insights with you. Today we are discussing discipline, spanking, grounding, and timeout. In our conversation, we are going to explore the Timeout Chair, its purpose, and some of the rules and regulations around it, why the Timeout Chair was more effective than simply saying, go to your room, at what age the Timeout Chair was not a discipline option any longer, how younger parents are now dealing with social media, phones, and other technology, and some of my parents' thoughts around how to get through that and how to manage that. Why my parents didn't buy any of their kids cars after the first one, how being the nice parent is actually doing a disservice to the child, how to manage cell phones at dinner, the yellow chart for curfew, time spent, and other guidelines. Make sure you look at the show notes or the blog post to view the visual of that. And actually, I have visuals of all of the things we'll discuss on the show notes, so definitely want to go there for the photos. And the spoon, when and how it is used for spanking, and why I was the only child that got really upset when we were given the memorabilia of the spoon. I'm really excited for you to listen to this episode. Love having these conversations with my parents and opening the dialogue. Again, remembering this is simply a conversation. There is no one formula, and appreciate them and their willingness to share their perspective and their insight. And I'm sure it's hard for them to have to think back over the past few decades and how they've done. And I just appreciate them. To me, it shows humility that they're willing to even, share these things and have this conversation with me and hopefully help each of you. So thank you in advance for any positive reviews or messages that you do want to send. They go a long way and they're very meaningful. So we do appreciate that. You can always reach me at Christy Joe, KRISTYJO at body-buddies, BUDDIES.com. We're back for number 3 with our parenting power discussions. I'm excited to talk about this topic this week with discipline and writing on our conversation from last week where we talked about discipline and the art of following through. And we've got some great feedback. So just wanted to let you both know. I have been receiving some messages just how much parents are enjoying listening to this and the perspective. So that's fun. We always great. Yeah, we're grateful that perspective is being shared. So let's dive into talking about some specifics now that were in our family. So the first thing I'd like to have you both share about is the Timeout Chair. Tell our audience what it was and what was the purpose of it. And then, of course, I'd love to share my perspective after.
Yeah. I was thinking about it when you asked about how did it come about and how old and everything. And I can pinpoint it because I made the Timeout Chair. We were living back in Provo. I was pregnant with Brandon. So it was before 1984. So within the first 3-4 years of our marriage. And they had, when we were in Montezuma Creek, and Auntie Winna, one of my mentors as a parent, had mentioned about having a Timeout Chair. So the idea was there. And so when the Relief Society had a homemaking night and somebody showed us how to make, and we actually made these little chairs out of PVC buckets. If you have about a 5-gallon or 3.5-gallon bucket, it's really easy. You just take a little saw and you cut it out and you put a bunch of foam in the inside. And anyway, I'll send you a picture of it. So for the cost of maybe $3, I had a Timeout Chair made, and I just started implementing that with the kids. When if they were upset about something or they needed time out, I'd just say, okay, you need to go sit on the Timeout Chair. And, I've noticed it, when So with my grand boys, with Desmond and Cayman, and their mom, Amelia, has said, but I just get so upset because sometimes they don't even go on the timeout chair. And, as I would recommend to any parents, and I have to Amelia, you have to totally disengage. That's where that matter of fact button comes in. When I go up to Desmond or Cayman and say, sorry, you need to go on the timeout chair. And if they kind of look at me like they're not going to go, and I'll just stick out my hand and say, hold my hand. Let's go. And sometimes they will be crying, but they hold my hand. And I walk to the timeout chair, and they really like it because that's when I sit down and talk and say, so do you know what you did wrong? Do you know why you're upset? And so the timeout chair can be a great place to have one-on-one time with the parent if it's handled well. Sometimes the timeout chair is a good place to have the child go so that you can have time out and think clearly. And just before we did this call, I pulled the timeout chair out because, we still have it. And I went to sit in it. And I went, that's when we stop using it, when we can't fit in it anymore. But I remember there was a couple of times that I would tell you kids, Mom needs to go sit on the timeout chair. I need a timeout. And I'd go sit on the timeout chair. I was really skinny for a little while there.
Well, actually, your text message just came through, and so I can't even describe, there was a feeling looking at that because I've never once viewed the timeout chair as a negative thing. You knew that you were absolutely in trouble, and I don't know, it just never felt like it was some horrible punishment. Grounding, on the other hand, was horrible punishment.
So did you feel like it was more of a chance to talk things through? You knew that a talk was coming, not a discipline, maybe?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Well, especially because I feel like, at least in my memory, the only time I got sent to the timeout chair was during dinner time or maybe family home evening, those types of settings where we were goofing off or being mean or hitting and scratching and punching.
Well, and the other thing about the timeout chair, because I've had lots of parents talk about it and they will set a timer or things like that, and I never felt good about that. My whole intent with the timeout chair was it was simply until you can be in control of yourself. When you can be in control, you can get off. And that's the same way it is with Desmond and Cayman. When you're ready to talk, let me know. I will come talk to you. When you're ready to behave, let me know, and you can get off so that the child decides how long they're on there. But it has to be that they recognize that they were out of control, they were upset, they were yelling, they were whatever. Okay, are you ready to change? Are you ready to behave? Great, let's go. And so it's not a punishment. It really is simply time out. And that's good.
And for me, it was also because sometimes my temper would get a little warm. And so it would give me an out to cool down, think things through, say, okay, what do I need to discuss with them? How should I approach this? Give me time to do that. So it was really time out for me, too. And I didn't implement it near as much as Mom did. She was here with the kids much more often.
But that really is true. It's a time out for the parent as well as for the child, for both of you to think.
You know what's interesting, because I'm fast-forwarding now, how many years later, that I'm seeing a connection between that, and I'm sure there's other variables too, but look at all of us kids and how we conduct relationships. All of us siblings, we talk about this, is that we don't stay mad for long, that we know how to calm ourselves down, that it's not like we ever have this week of no talking battle with people and stuff like that, maybe on a rare occasion, but for the most part, each of us kids knows how to gather ourselves, whether it's with a significant other or their spouses or with each other or a different situation, but we have the ability to gather ourselves and then have a conversation and we don't sweep things under the rug, I can now trace that back, perhaps. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Do you think that?
Yeah. Well, I think, as a starting point, because, I've related this negative thing that growing up, my family didn't talk. I never was taught how to identify my feelings, how to talk about my feelings, because the example was you just get mad and madder and then explode. And boy, I was really good at that. And so was the rest of the family. And so when I finally did learn how to talk and identify my feelings, and in large part to Dad, that I remember sitting at the dinner table as you kids were getting older teenagers, and somebody said one time, I know what we're putting on your tombstone. We need to talk.
That would be Denzel that said that.
Anyway, yep. And so, that's actually, I think, a very sweet compliment that we've talked. We've learned how to identify our feelings, work through difficult feelings. It's not that we don't ever have those, but when you learn how to deal with them. And I think it starts at a very young age with our kids and grandkids, helping them recognize, okay, you're getting upset about what we're having for dinner is age appropriate, but how you're acting, how you're dealing with it is not acceptable. If you want to scream and kick your legs, you can go do that on the timeout chair, and when you're ready to talk, let me know. When we talk, we say, okay, so you didn't like what I fixed for dinner. Is that right? Yeah, I hate meatloaf. Okay, I understand that. And all I ask is for you to have a bite. If that's the problem, that's okay. You can sit on the timeout chair and think about it. And if you don't want to have dinner, that's fine. You can sit on the timeout chair. It's really learning how as a parent to be matter of fact with the discipline within what you feel good about. Okay, well, if you don't want meatloaf, you can have ice cream. No, I don't think so. It's not about accommodating, but it is about understanding and helping the child understand themselves. That's the big thing, I think, for me.
Why do you think the chair was so effective versus just sitting in our rooms, or because that seems to be a default for a lot of parents?
Oh,
go to your room.
There's too many things in your room. And the beauty of this little timeout chair, I could move it wherever, and I still do with Desmond and Cayman.
Oh.
If they're finding it right next to the marble track, I can play the marble track while I'm sitting on the timeout chair. No. It's not a play place. It is simply a think place to help calm down.
Well, and when you said that, I remember you pulling it in different rooms. And that was almost worse because that's where your siblings could see you sitting on the timeout chair. How embarrassing.
Well, and again, this little chair, it's a bucket with some foam in it. It's nothing elaborate. There's no handles on it, so you can't flip anything. You just can sit in it. And you'd asked this before too, is, how long did we use the timeout chair? When you kids turned 8 years old, and we'll talk about the spoon too.
Right. Yeah.
8 years old was the turning point, because in the LDS church, 8 years old is the age of accountability. It's when you are old enough to make your own choices and be responsible for them, and therefore to be able to be baptized. And so my feeling was, when you turn 8, you don't sit on the timeout chair. You don't get disciplined with the spoon. What happened instead, Christy?
We got grounded.
Yep, that was it.
Yeah.
And there were times you said, "Can't I just get the spoon out?"
Grounding was the worst. Oh man, but that's effective parenting right there. So, especially with all of our younger parents listening, and they're experiencing new challenges that you didn't really face with us having all of these cell phones and social media. So maybe I'm talking more about kids that are old enough to have a phone, but my goodness, these days his parents are giving phones younger and younger.
Yeah.
What are some of the limitations or difficulties that you can see parents might have around technology, maybe in taking away phones, grounding from phones? I feel like that's something I hear quite often with my dance students. I'm grounded from my phone for 4 days. And I mean, is there any just thoughts in general on technology and parenting and taking things away?
I remember a few years ago, I wish I would have kept the letter that a mom had. It was on Facebook or something, but about this mom who had done up a contract with her son when he received his cell phone. Number 1, it is not your cell phone. It is mine. Number 2, number 3, number 4, refer back to number 1. It is not your cell phone. It is mine. And that's one of the things that I kind of figured out. Dad and I figured out after the fact when, I mentioned we bought Denzel his truck for his 16th birthday. We never bought anybody else a car after that. And when that truck went bye-bye, we learned the hard way, but we learned thoroughly. We do not buy our children any cars. This is our car. You are free to use it as long as your grades are up, you're doing what you're supposed to. Da-da-da-da-da-da. The minute that changes, sorry, you no longer have the privilege of using the car. Refer to number 1. It is our car. It is not your car. And so I think it's really important for parents to keep that distinction very clear to the child. I think a lot of times parents want to be the good guy. Oh, we'll give you this and we'll give you this. And I think it's a disservice to the child. Now, I think cell phones are wonderful. And I just, right now, I would never give maybe a junior of high school, a smartphone. They don't need a smartphone. They need a phone that you can access, you can call them, you can text them. Yeah. I think when you put a smartphone in a child, maybe I should say under 25, I think we have to be so careful, and I think there's a lot of parents that are not very careful. If they give their child a smartphone, they better be checking it nightly for the history, for the apps, for everything. And if they don't know much about it, then that child shouldn't have a phone. If the parents don't know enough how to police it, or they better have a very good friend who will do it for them. Yeah. Because otherwise I think we set our children up to deal with all kinds of stuff that they shouldn't have to. Should I tell the story about the cell phone that I took away from one of the children living with us for a time?
Sure. And then I want to hear about Dad's experience being in the high school scene and maybe any observations with cell phones as well. So, Dad, you can think about that.
Yeah. Okay. So there was a young man living with us for a few months, and at one point I took his cell phone away because of something that had happened. I don't remember. Well, I got a text on his cell phone from a girl that I had taken horseback riding with this young man. And
I remember this story.
Yeah, it was a picture that was pornographic. And I was appalled. And when I saw who it came from, I called this young lady during the lunch hour at school. And I said, so, were you aware that I have this young man's cell phone? And she goes, no. I said, you have two choices. You can come see me after school, or I will come over to your parents' home and we will visit together. You decide. Well, of course, she came over to the house and we talked, and she was very apologetic. She said that somebody had sent it to her saying, oh, haha, isn't this funny? Send it to everybody you know. Well, again, that's why I say sometimes kids aren't smart enough, know enough to have a cell phone. If they can't determine that that's really bad and delete, rather than pass on. There's just a lot of, and that's just one little thing that happened to come to my attention because I had the phone. There's lots more stuff that happens that we're not even aware of. So now Dad maybe can tell you something about phones at school. His favorite thing. That was sarcasm.
Yes, because I did not go to college to be a cell phone cop. That's not why I got into education. And so it's not something I like to deal with. It's not something I want to deal with. Nevertheless, the high tide is coming in, and it keeps coming in, and it will not stop. Yeah. And my tactic is, I'm not hard-nosed. I put forth my expectations. I remind them of my expectations. And I say, I expect you to do what I ask. Now, I do let them use their cell phones for educational stuff, because the hard copy medical dictionaries in my room are never used anymore. They don't even want to use them. They want to use, that's just the way technology's going. But anyway, what's hard is to know when they're really using it for what I think they're using it for versus if they're just doing other stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to try to police that, and I don't know.
Well, and have you ever had them put their phones up in the box, up in the front of the classroom? You used to. I used to, if they, if I caught them on it too many times, I'd say, let me keep it for the rest of the day or the rest of the class. Or if they ask to go to the bathroom, and Dad will say, leave your phone here and you're welcome to.
They all still have to.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, they always leave their phone to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. Well, and I think about that. If we had kids at home, still, that would just be a gift. It's kind of like when you guys come home at dinner, or for dinner, and we've got everybody here. What have I said at times? Put your phones away.
Put your phone, yeah. Yep. Yeah, I knew that one right out.
Yeah. And so again, it's a reminder of manners. Now, of course, maybe something important, an emergency might come through, and but for everybody to sit at the table and be texting, not at my kitchen table.
Right.
We get together to be together. If you want to go play on your phone, go on the Timeout Chair.
Yep. I know a lot of families do the cell phone baskets, especially like with family dinner. That's probably a modern now, a good approach.
Well, and I think it's so important for parents to know they lead the charge. If you want to sit there and be on your phone, then don't you dare expect your kids not to be. And so parents need to pay attention to what they're doing and what example they're setting.
Yeah.
And then when the parents want to be engaged with the kids, guess who's going to want to be engaged with the parents? The kids want their parents' attention desperately. But if they never get it, then pretty soon they give up and okay, fine. At least my phone pays attention to me.
Yeah.
So, and that's another thing at our dinner table. How much we always talked. What did you learn today? What did you do today? What was the best thing that happened? Did anything bad happen? I loved our dinners.
So many good memories. Oh.
Yeah. Good times to talk.
That's right. So going back to additional ways that discipline was used, the yellow chart comes to mind that because there were so many kids close in age, there was this yellow chart that sat on the door that was the command.
The vacuum closet door, the inside of the vacuum closet door. So we knew where it was, but it wasn't always out.
No, we knew, you had to open the door to see it, but we knew where it was because it held the guidelines for when you hit a certain age, how much more freedom you had in different areas, whether it was curfew or sleepovers or There was a lot of different things. Why don't you share some of those aspects of that yellow chart?
Yeah, I was talking to somebody about it today, and I pulled the chart out, and I'm going, wow, this was really in-depth. Do you remember how it came about, Christy?
No idea. Nope.
Was family home evening one Monday night. We just sat down with you kids and said, okay, we want to talk about what you feel is appropriate. Okay, and we had kids all different ages. And so it was everybody's input that came up with these guidelines. I just typed it up. I didn't make it up. Everybody contributed. So ages 3 to 10 were supposed to be in bed on Monday through Thursday night, somewhere between 7:30 and 8 o'clock. Friday night, they were to be home by dark and in bed by 10. Saturday night, showers in bed by 8 or 9 o'clock because we had early church. And then Sunday night, they were to be in bed between 7:30 and 8. And so then ages 11 and 12 had, a little bit later times. Ages 13 to 15, I love the Friday evening. It says, occasional activities, clear if later than 10 o'clock for 13-year-olds, 10:30 for 14-year-olds, and 11 o'clock for 15-year-olds. And so when you're 15 and you come in and you say, hey, Mom, Dad, can I stay at Susie's house till midnight? We're going to be doing a lot of fun stuff. What does the chart say? Well, let me go check. It says 11 o'clock for 15. But, Mom, I'm almost 16. How old are you? What does the chart say? I didn't have to get upset. No, what does the chart say? We decided on the chart together. The chart rules. So, and for the most part, we didn't deviate from it. It was just... We've already talked about this. And then so ages 16 to 18 on weeknights was 10 o'clock plus use wisdom. A lot of times you guys were working. And so it was simply, you've got early morning stuff and you're going to be tired. You figure it out. And then Friday nights, dates and or activities home by 11:30 to 12 p.m. Call when necessary. And then Saturday was home by 11:30, 12 o'clock. Occasionally, please. Call when necessary. And then Sunday night, 10 p.m., please use wisdom. Dates should be church-related. If you went on a date Sunday night, it was not to go to a football game or a concert or anything like that. Anyway, and so then there's additional guidelines that have to do with friends. Okay, I have to read this. Yes, friends are good. Be a good friend and choose friends that you want to be like. Help each other be the best you. All friends are welcome in our home when either parent is home. Check for inviting them if we are not going to be home. Seldom will it be okay for our children to be at a friend's home without a parent in attendance. Please check with us first. And so, there's about dating, there's movies and videos, there's sleepovers, there was work in general, home jobs, Saturday jobs, and there's the little consequence choices at the bottom.
Oh, I don't remember that part. Definitely
I bet you will when I tell you. Okay, number one, if you had done something wrong, that there needed to be some consequences because you no longer got the spoon or the timeout chair. One was work for 1 hour doing designated jobs for Dad or Mom with a kind attitude. Number two was pay $2 and wash a designated window inside and out with no streaks. Otherwise, revert to number one, no IOUs accepted. Number three, be grounded for the remainder of the day. No TV, no phone calls. Play in our yard only. If this takes place later than noon, the grounding will carry over to Monday. And then the bottom it says, if the child is unable to choose a consequence, they will stay in their room until the time that they can choose.
And these were enforced, I will add. They were absolutely enforced.
Well, but can you see there was always choice?
Yeah, there's choice and order and
matter of fact.
Yeah, matter of fact.
I remember so often, I didn't have to sit there and think, now what do I do? It's already there.
check the chart.
Look at the chart.
It made our life really easy.
Yeah.
Well, especially probably remembering between all the different kids. Now, how old were they when we let them do that? And what kind of, was that punishment too severe or not severe enough? And
right,
I'm sure it helped you just
immensely.
Keep very moderate.
And when kids see a solid front, that they see their parents are, matter of fact, they have things organized. They seem like they know what they're doing. Oh, I better behave. But when you act like you don't know what you're doing and you're kind of scatterbrained and wishy-washy, man, they are going to push and take you for a ride. So,
yeah. Well, we've brought up the spoon a few times, so I think that's our final crescendo here. This is always an interesting one to talk about, the spoon. Why don't you share both of your take on how the spoon was first discussed between you two and how it started to get used?
Okay, I think the spoon came about when I was at college. I think it was my third year living up at BYU. Somebody had left a utensil, and I still have it. I went and got it out of the drawer. I'm holding it in my hand right now. I'll take a picture and send it to you. Yes. Anyway, it's a solid steel spoon. There's no seams in it, no nothing. It is a large, it's not like a tablespoon. It's a very large serving spoon. Anyway, back when we lived in Montezuma Creek, I'd read a book that talked about having a discipline. One of the books, and I mean, there's a book called The 1 Minute Mother that I absolutely loved and would recommend because it really gave a great idea, several ideas of dealing with children. So, The 1 Minute Mother. Anyway. So I started to implement the spoon, and there are rules and guidelines behind the spoon. Number one, the parent never goes and gets the spoon. The spoon is in the drawer because it is a serving spoon, and it's great to use it to serve with, and then you can say, oh, look, it's the spoon, and it causes all kinds of memories in the children.
Yep.
Anyway, so the spoon has to be somewhere where the child can go get it, in a drawer or whatever. And so the parent never gets it. The child has to go get the spoon, and he might be crying, he may be upset. No, I don't want to. I know, I understand, but you'll need to go get the spoon. And the parent needs to stay calm. And doesn't, Johnny, you go get that spoon right now. No, don't. And so the child goes and gets the spoon, and is almost always crying. Okay, here. And the child has to be able to say what they did wrong. Why are they getting a spank? I don't know. Did you hit your sister? Well, yeah. Are you supposed to hit your sister? No. But did you? Yes. Okay, you're getting a spank because you hit your sister and you know you are not supposed to do that. It's willful disobedience. And so what would be a better way to handle that? Tell you. Yeah, that's right. Next time, don't hit her. Come and talk to me. Anyway, and so the next rule was that the child had to bend over and touch the floor so their bum is up in the air. And 90% of the time, I would just take the spoon and go pop, barely tap their bum, because the disciplining had already taken place. They'd been terrified of the spoon because the spoon's a little threatening. And they had to explain what they'd done wrong so they knew what they'd done wrong, why they were getting a spank. And then I would hug the child, tell them how much I loved them. Okay, now go put the spoon away. That's the spoon. The spoon is not a beating tool. If it is, throw that thing away.
Dad, did you ever use the spoon?
Yes.
But I don't think very often.
Not very often.
Yeah, I don't remember.
And I think I did a little more than just a tap sometimes. But not beating.
Yeah. The discussion around the time for you to calm and for the child to have that time of being accountable for what they've done and giving that little space and time. For that all to happen really prevents a lot of that instant rash reaction that could happen for parents, as well-meaning as they are, and then feel that guilt after.
Yeah, I think as I think about it, this really was in connection with the 1 Minute Mother, because it talked about setting 1 minute goals. So it's not a long thing. Okay, I'm going to work on not hitting my sister. Okay, and then you write this little sentence on the fridge, and so you have about 3 1 minute goals. If something happens that there's a problem, there's the 1 minute discipline. And that's where it comes, do you know what you did wrong? Do you know why this is happening? So that the child tells what they did wrong. So there's that recognition. And then the 1 minute reinforcement, the 1 minute love, where the parent tells the child how much they love them. I know you'll do better, and I'm excited to see how you improve. And so it's just a very positive thing, and I just use the spoon as part of that process. And I don't, maybe you, how many times did we have family dinners with lots of different people coming over, and the spoon was always used to dish up our really good Jell-O salad.
The Jell-O, the red Jell-O, yep.
Yep. And you kids would invariably say, oh, yeah, the spoon. Do you know about the spoon? And my feeling was that was always actually a compliment, that our kids could tell about this. If there was such shame and horror associated with this discipline, nobody would ever talk about it. And it was always talked about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then what was it, a few Christmases ago that we were given a memorabilia?
Okay, so how many times for Christmas we've bought duplicate gifts so that each child, and wrapped them similarly, and so we'd hand them out and say, okay, everybody ready, open now, because you all got the same thing. Whether it was the power tunes from when you kids were little and the songs that we used to have you guys sing.
I better have mine in a tub somewhere.
I've got mine right up in the cupboard. The other night I broke into song. Oh, it's your attitude that makes you
do the thing you do.
Boom, right. Boom, boom, attitude. We could sit here and sing all night long, huh?
Oh,
anyway, and so a few Christmases ago, it was actually Denzel's last Christmas. We were all up north for Christmas since some couldn't come down or whatever. And I was so excited because I had got the best gift ever. And they were all wrapped up and they handed the presents out, and all you kids opened your present. And there were differing degrees of laughter and excitement, except for you, which I didn't notice until after the fact. Everybody was so excited. Everybody got the spoon. I found these metal spoons, solid, one piece. And my feeling was not, how you kids, when you get married and have kids, how you choose to discipline your children is totally up to you. I don't expect you to use the spoon because you were raised with the spoon, but I wanted that memory always there. And so everybody got a spoon. And so you can tell your reaction.
Yeah. Well, okay, let's back up a little bit. So you had actually called me just a few months ago, which was really neat, just to kind of chat about, is there anything you want to talk about in the past? And we were able to talk about this, and so kind of tying in both these things. I think for me, and what we've already talked about, is for my personality being so hard on myself naturally. I really don't know that I need, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, when I was young, just because I am so self-driven and I keep myself in the boundaries for the most part. I just remember feeling like it was complete, not judgment, just that I just never was good enough. And that it was another mark on the fact that I had already made a mistake. I knew I'd made a mistake. And now this, I feel like humiliating is too strong of a word, but I can't think of something better. And it was just me, just my personality.
And when you and I talked about all the reasoning behind it from the parent's perspective, because I implemented this originally to make sure I never hit my children because of some of the things that happened as I was growing up. And I did not want to repeat history. And so implementing this whole process of you may not go get the spoon, only the child can go get it. You cannot spank them until they've been able to identify what they did wrong. And then are you disciplining or punishing? And it better be a discipline. And, just having the safeguards for me as a parent, but your perspective as a child at that time, it was just one more way to prove that maybe you weren't perfect and you wanted to be perfect. And so to be given the spoon for a Christmas present was probably not the best Christmas present you've ever received, maybe until after the fact.
Yeah, I remember wondering why everyone else was laughing. Like, why do you guys think this is great?
Yeah. And again, everybody's perspective.
Because we're all so different. So with parents who have, different personality children, which, doesn't everyone? I can't even imagine how difficult that is. Is it even possible to have different discipline techniques for different personalities?
Oh, I think definitely. And we did with you kids, and I do with Desmond and Cayman. Sometimes all it takes is a look. The stink eye. Did you really just say that? And so I don't even have to say, oh, which reminds me, just the other day I was watching the kids because they were sick and Neil had to go somewhere. And I was unloading the dishwasher, and Cayman was getting up on a chair. And I don't know what I do know what he thought. All of a sudden, he just burst into tears and went running in the other room on the timeout chair. And I went, and because he was so upset, I followed him in very quickly. I said, Cayman, what's the matter? And it was the reaction he has given when he's been disciplined, to have to go on the timeout chair. And I said, did you think Grandma said to go on the timeout chair? Oh, and he was so upset. He had scooted the chair and it made a loud noise, and it made me jump, and my hand went up. He thought I was pointing on the timeout chair.
Wow, he trained.
Yes, and that's it exactly. He knew that, that a certain motion meant get going now. And he didn't ask questions. He just flew. And I'm going, oh, wow. And I felt so bad. But at the same time, I thought, he has been trained. And he knows if he's done something wrong or thinks he may have done something wrong, go,
Yeah.
And so, I think every child is different, and you need to be sensitive because it could be very demoralizing to one child to have to go to the timeout chair, and then the other one just a relief.
Yeah.
And everything in between.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad we were able to have that conversation. And what's funny is, because I get to interview so many different people with what I do, and so many different therapists and mindset people, and how many people just try to dig into my past and my childhood, and I'm like, I think we're good. Like, I think we worked through anything, and so I just publicly want to say thank you for all that you both have done to truly have made such a good childhood and growing up and formative years of. I'm so grateful for this discipline that is now, it blesses me every single day. So thank you for going to those extents for all of us kids.
You're welcome.
Yes, you're welcome.
And, I think, again, parents have to be really, really careful because we can perceive initially with these young children, and maybe they're throwing a fit, well, I'll be nice. I'll give them the cracker that they wanted. Well, we're not doing them a favor. It's so important to be consistent and know what really is best. And maybe you're worried and maybe you don't know, but you have a better idea than the child does. And to be brave as a parent. You've got to have courage to do what you feel is best. And then to be willing, and that's kind of what that phone call was about a few months ago, as I was looking at myself as a parent. And so, my youngest child is 24, our youngest child, and thinking, I would much rather talk to each one of my children and see if there's anything that maybe is stuck in their back of their brain that they wish had never happened or resented, that has never been resolved, and to be able to help them process that before I die. Once a person dies, it's a little hard to process. Yeah. And so that was the whole motivation behind my calling you, because although it might be hard, it's hard if, there's stuff that we've done wrong. But how much better to be able to talk about it and apologize if there's need for an apology. And so that's, I think parents need to take the lead, but also when they make mistakes, be willing to say, you know what I learned about me today, Johnny? I realized that I'm not as patient as I'd like to be, and I'm going to make a 1-minute goal for me on the fridge. Will you help me do better? Just all the different ways that we can help our kids feel like they're important, like they're learning, they're growing, because as a parent, I think we need to work ourselves out of a job.
I like that. Dad, what advice would you give anyone out there who's really concerned over being the bad guy, being the mean parent, and wanting so bad to be liked by their kids that they have a hard time putting their foot down and following through on the discipline?
But there's one that Dad used to use all the time. He would come home. I think he got it from school when the kids would come home and say, everyone lets their kid do this. I would say, name 10. It was the perfect answer.
And they would go,
well,
maybe,
Al and Susie and Mark. Okay, that's 3. Name 10. It was great. Everyone gets to do this. Name 10. And so it kind of goes along with that, nevertheless.
Yeah.
You don't have to argue with your kids. And if they want to argue, you'll need to go on the timeout chair. When you're ready to talk, not argue, I'll be happy to talk to you.
Oh, this has been great. So insightful. I'm sure that our listeners have enjoyed our discussion. Yeah,
there's another time, right?
How many 35 years of your experience in an hour?
Yeah. And you know what? Sometimes that can be a little, you just kind of go, we survived it already. Do we have to rehash it?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But that's okay for you because we love you.
Thank you. Well, I'm enjoying this and excited about continuing onward. So we will be talking next week. And thank you both so much.
All right. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Okay. Love you both.
Love you.
I love you.
Bye.
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 If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review. You can do that on iTunes, Stitcher, or any of the podcast players you are listening to this on. We are grateful for each and every one of your listens and hope you find that value. Through your reviews, we're able to reach more people. That's just the way the internet works. So we do thank you in advance for your positive review and for sharing your story with us. If at any time you'd like to reach out, share with us some insights, what you're learning from the Power Your Life Today podcast, definitely welcome that. You can reach me at at KristyJo, KristyJo at body-buddies.com. And if you're interested in learning more about nutrition and fitness and becoming a strategist and a critical thinker of your own health, join me on my other podcast, Body Buddies, where you will learn how to power your body one meal, one workout, and one day at a time.